this video, which Bonnie and I saw some time ago, and as soon as we saw it, we said, the congregation has to see this. When would be an appropriate time? I Am Israel. Today is Israel Independence Day, celebrating the birthday of Israel. This is the day. I think you will enjoy this if we could have all the lights turned down.
I think we have a privilege of seeing with our own eyes the words of the book materializing and becoming a reality. In the history of mankind, there has never been a nation that has left its homeland and returned to its homeland. Not after 2,000 years.
In 1916, when my grandfather first moved to Israel, there were 60,000 Jews in Israel. Exactly 100 years later, there are over 6 million. Never in the world has there been a population explosion from 60,000 to 6 million as we've seen here in the land of Israel. It's unprecedented. Something is happening of historic proportions.
The world's actually constantly going through changes, but I think we're experiencing a hyper switch. Something's moving quicker.
We're living in times of prophecy. It says, I will bring you in from the four corners of the earth, and people will know that you are my people and that I am your God.
Here we see something so epic, so huge, so historic, promised in the Bible.
It's something that people couldn't have imagined 50 years ago.
God says in Jeremiah, no more am I going to be known as the God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. I'm going to be known as the God who brought you out of the land of the north and the other countries. And when he brought back the people from the land of the north, from Russia, he was saying something else. He's saying, no more am I going to be known as the God of history. I'm going to be known as the God of now. Open up your eyes, watch it happening. I'm on the move.
There are more Jews studying the Bible today than ever before in Israel's history. Every single promise is now coming to pass in our lifetime. And what that does is it inspires people to want to be a part of it. They feel a calling in their life to say, if God is with Israel, then either I'm moving to Israel or I'm standing with Israel. I'm helping Israel. I'm supporting Israel. I want to be a part of that.
Some truly feel I have the opportunity to be part of what God is doing in this land. And that doesn't only mean Jews. That means those that stand with God wherever they are.
When Isaiah said that all the nations will be streaming like water to the Temple Mount, he was talking about you. From Missouri, from Washington, from California, from Brazil, from Tunisia, from Indonesia. So if you want to connect to the essence of the whole thing, the place where God chose to lay his divine presence, you got it. This is it.
With the dawn of each new day, life is returning to the land of the Bible. And around the world, millions of believers are feeling drawn to this place. Now is the time to chart your own journey, to discover for yourself the miracle of the land and the courageous hearts of the people of Israel.
I am 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 Israel. I am Israel.
Now, today, I'd like to talk about why the Israelis should indeed be celebrating. Why is it they should be celebrating? Where has Israel come in the last 71 years, modern Israel? And now in 1948, it was hinted at in in the video that the population of Israel back in the day that it started, the modern state of Israel, was only about 800,000. Today, the population is 9 million. So in the 71 years, they have grown a bit. Of those 9 million, about 7 million are Jewish. It's about 74% of 3/4 of the people in Israel are Jewish. And it also represents that 3/4 of the Jewish of the people, the citizens in Israel that are Jewish, represent almost half of the world's Jewish population. The rest are here in in New York. And when I thought about this, it occurred to me that perhaps you and I, sitting here, are seeing a fulfillment of the text that comes from Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 4 and 5. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, God said, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back. Indeed, he will bring you to the land that belonged to your fathers, and you will take possession of it, and he will make you more prosperous and numerous than your fathers. That was the promise that God made to Israel. This was, of course, in Deuteronomy, as you realize, that was the moment that Israel stood just east of the Jordan River, ready to move in and take the land of Canaan, the promised land. So, when we think of who's there today, as we said, 74% are Jewish, but also there are another almost 2 million that are Arabs, representing about 21%, and the remainder, pretty much, the 430,000 unaccounted for in this number, are from different faiths or origins. And as was also mentioned in the movie I Am Israel, just this past year, almost 4.5 million tourists visited Haaretz, the Hebrew word for the land. Haaretz. It's also the name of a newspaper there, Haaretz. The average, I want to share some thoughts, some numbers with you here. And there are a lot of numbers, and you don't have to, I don't think there'll be a test on this, so you don't, but just kind of catch the flow of what has been going on in Israel and where it is today. The average life expectancy in Israel today for men, Israeli men, now stands at almost 81 years. That's the average life expectancy. Just for comparison, in the U.S., it's only 76. So if you're getting worried about it, I think it's time to move to Israel. Does that follow? I don't know. And for women, the average life expectancy is 85 years compared to only 81 in the United States. There are almost 50,000 people in Israel living there now who are 90 years old or older. Almost 90% of Israelis say that they are satisfied with their lives in Israel. Now, I don't have a comparison for the people in the United States. How many of you are satisfied with your lives here in the United States? All right, we probably have we have a third. We got a ways to go here. And I think I know why it's an issue, but we won't get into that. 60% of Israelis think that there were many more successes than failures this year than last year. They're doing better. Over half the people say that. 80% say they were satisfied with Israel's achievements this past year, compared to only 71% who said they were satisfied 5 years ago in 2014. That survey, this is a survey that was done in Israel recently. Over 80%, now you have to go over these numbers carefully. Over 80% of what the term that was was used in the survey are national religious Jews. That's probably people who are somewhere between Orthodox and certainly practicing Jewish people. So over 80% of those, and 65% of the traditional religious Jews, the ones that come when they can and when it's convenient, kind of like happens in this country, and maybe 61% even of the non-religious, they are optimistic about the future of their democracy. Israel being the only democracy that we know of in the Middle East. And I have some interesting comment on that in a little bit as we go through this. Since Israel's birth, as the years have gone by, Jewish citizens have expressed increasing pride in their country. Kind of make Israel great again. What is the abbreviation? MAIA. Maya. What's perhaps a bit surprising is that now, today, a majority of Arab citizens also say they are proud to be Israelis. I was surprised to hear that a majority of them feel that way. In other areas, we know, and we won't go into the details on these, that there's been much progress made. For example, everybody knows that technology in Israel, the advancement in technology is absolutely amazing. A lot of the companies here, high-tech companies, go to Israel for technical support. They've done amazing things in the area of medicine, food production. As you looked at the land where all those rocks are and so on, the land is now, yielding great. They're feeding the local communities the citrus fruits and things that are growing in Israel, not to mention the wines. I didn't know that about the fact that grapes were taken by the Romans from Israel and brought to Italy. So next time you drink Italian wine, it might have a Jewish origin there. They're very good at, they've built a lot of housing, as you could see, the tremendous boom in housing and roads, transportation, and in general, the population growth that we've seen. Yet, this tiny country, which is, they say, roughly the size of New Jersey, land area-wise, it's actually a little smaller. It's about 90% of the size of New Jersey. It still struggles with widespread poverty. More than 1.7 million Israelis, that's 22%, live below the poverty line. 1 out of every 3 children and more than 180,000 of the elderly continue to live in poverty. On March 30th, just recently, a month ago, a little more than a month ago, the missiles began to fall again in Israel. Missiles that were fired from very close range. At this point, and I've lost track, it's probably well over this, at this point that when this was, the information that I found was written, it was over 700 missiles that have hit innocent citizens' houses in various parts of Israel. But it might surprise you to know that many of the Palestinians in Gaza are not in favor of such attacks against Israel. Many of them are not in favor. Did you hear that? I want to share with you a letter from one such resident of Gaza that was written to an Israeli friend that he had. And the Israeli friend shared this letter. It was in the news. This is the text of the letter written by a resident, a Palestinian in Gaza. He said, in recent weeks there have been many protests, catch that? Protests against Hamas among the people of Gaza. Under the slogan, the protests used the slogan, "We want to live." And Hamas has murdered some of the protesters. They've broken the bones of others, and others they put in jail. The situation, he writes, it was very painful. As we have seen in the past, when the spotlight gets turned on Hamas, they know how to deflect the spotlight back towards Israel. And so they start shooting rockets at Israel. By shooting the rockets, they cause the attention of the greater Arab world to be taken off Gaza and directed to Israel. It's a diversionary tactic. It happens every time there is criticism against Hamas. He writes, it is so sad. We have many contacts in Gaza. The people have no food to eat. The average salary is about $100 per month. That is, for those who are blessed enough to even get such work. This is a very sad letter indeed about what's really going on in Gaza. But under the control of Hamas, it's a mess because of that. But there are other serious growing problems right on the other borders, right around them. And I use this phrase, the so-called Palestinians seem to agree, at least their leadership does, that Israel needs to just go completely, as you've heard, and this has not changed. You know, every time I use that word Palestinians, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I don't know about you. I mean, it just does. So I'm going to take a moment right now to just acquaint you with a few facts about this word Palestinians. First of all, there is no such thing as Palestinian people, regardless of what the claim is now. There is no Palestinian history. There never was a Palestinian people until the claims these days. There is no Palestinian language. There never has been any independent, sovereign, so-called Palestinian state in all of recorded history, let alone an Arab independent state of Palestine, which is what they're demanding. However, today, as I continue, I shall use the word Palestinian to refer to those people who self-identify that way. They self-identify as Palestinians. So we're going to use that word, but I'm going to keep it in quotes because I want to point out the fact that it's a word that is actually kind of a made-up word. And it's being used, and has been used effectively, unfortunately, as far as the rest of the world is concerned. Since 2001, Palestinian militants have launched thousands of rockets and mortar attacks on Israel from the Gaza Strip. From 2004 to 2014, these attacks, and there's a little out of date here, these attacks killed 27 Israeli civilians, 5 foreign nationals, 5 IDF soldiers, and at least 10 Palestinians who were living in Israel, as well as injuring more than 1,900 others. But the biggest effect of these rockets and mortars that are going to Israel is the widespread PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, and the disruption of daily life among the Israeli populace. This is the biggest effect of what's going on with these rockets that are hitting in Israel. In Sderot, this is the Israeli city that's closest to the Gaza Strip, and if you'll stay with me in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly where that is. In Sderot, the Israeli city closest to that strip, there are documented PTSD incidents among young children. It just tears at your heart. The PTSD children, almost 50% are suffering from PTSD because of the rocket attacks. In addition to high rates of depression and miscarriage. The range and effect of these missile attacks, I'm going to show you right now some of them. Here's a map showing the ranges and warning times of missiles that were launched from the Gaza Strip into Israel. But this is hard to see. I thought it would be. You can't see it very well, even in the front rows. So I'm going to just take a section of it. The upper portion, you can see the outline of the Israel there, as I hope you can even see that. It may be hard to even see that. But I'm going to take that upper portion going out into the Mediterranean Sea there. I'm going to expand that for you so maybe we can see a little bit more. So here's what that looks like. Looking at the northern portion of Israel from about Beersheba north. And of course, that's where most of the people in Israel live, because the southern area is called the Negev. It's a desert region. And this map shows the warning times for the missiles that are fired out of Gaza. And you can see it varies from seconds to a minute and a half or so. Let me show you, first of all, where Gaza is on this map. It's on the lower left-hand section, kind of a light-colored portion of land right there. That's the Gaza Strip, it's called. The one that Israel gave back to the control of the Arabs. Remember, Ariel Sharon decided to do that. Wasn't long after he did that. He had to. You remember that? Any of you remember when Sharon did that? And he pulled Jewish people, literally. The army went in and forcefully removed them from Gaza in order to give the land back. It was a land for peace plan. Well, how'd that work out? No. Sharon, actually, it was fascinating what happened to Sharon after that. Whether God struck him or not, he had a brain seizure, and he lay like a vegetable for about a little over 6 years and finally died. Ariel Sharon did. Shortly after he did this. So there's the Gaza Strip, and just to give you an idea, here's Jerusalem, which is, I estimate, about 1.2 minutes flight time for a missile that was fired from the Gaza Strip, according to this map. Tel Aviv is about the same distance, a little further north than Jerusalem, but about the same radial distance as Jerusalem is. And here's Haifa, kind of all of a minute and a half or so from the time a missile is launched. A minute and a half. Think about that. That's not much time to get an alarm going, to drop what you're doing and run for cover, is it? If you think that's tough, here's Sderot. Are you ready? Right next to Gaza. About 2 seconds or so. That's no time. Missiles coming. Here's some pictures of some of the things, and there's some, we could be here for a very long time looking at these. This is a picture of an Israeli boy carrying a spent Qassam rocket in Sderot. You can see the front of the missile has been damaged when it landed, of course. And this is what a missile like that would do. Here's a house in Sderot that was hit by one of those rockets. Pretty well destroyed there, at least what we can see of it. Here is a young boy, as you can see, who was lost his left lower leg and his right leg. Lower leg it looks like it's in pretty bad shape. It was disabled by a Palestinian so-called rocket. This is what your children in central Israel. Now, this is not Sderot. This is in central Israel. During a rocket attack. Somebody actually took a picture. And you can see, imagine sending your young children off to school, and what's going through your mind as a parent when you have this kind of thing happening? It's a kindergarten. And here is an example. I thought this was an interesting image of a bomb shelter in Sderot, where they had painted it to try to look a little less intimidating to children. So they drew some clouds and grass and some sheep grazing on the land and so on. So maybe when the children have to run to it, they don't see it as a frightening, intimidating place to go. I thought that was a fascinating approach. Here's a picture of a young boy, an Israeli boy, standing in what are the remains of his home after it was destroyed by a Palestinian Qassam rocket. And this was in the city of Ashkelon, which is a little north of the Gaza Strip, a little way up the coast, Ashkelon. Not much left of his house. There was a kindergarten classroom in Beersheba that was struck by a Grad rocket fired by the Palestinians. Yeah, right through the roof. What a mess. You know, Israel, they became a state in 48, but they continue to fight not just their neighbors in order to keep their land, but also they have to fight in the United Nations. I have a very short film clip I want to show you that was just made about 10 or 11, 12 days ago here at the United Nations of Danny Danon, who's the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. And if you would please turn the lights out. This is only about a minute and a half or so long, a minute. Danny Danon explaining why the land belongs to Israel.
And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. And I will give to you and to your descendants after you all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God.
He's reading from Genesis.
This is the deed to our land. From the book of Genesis to the Jewish exodus from Egypt, to receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, and to the realization of God's covenant in the Holy Land of Israel, the Bible paints a consistent picture. The entire history of our people and our connection to Eretz Israel begins right here.
He had to put on his kippah before.
It is not just the Hebrew Bible or the 15 million Jews worldwide that accepts this right. It is accepted across all three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Quran itself accepts the divine deed of the Jewish people to the land of Israel.
There was just less than 2 weeks ago, Danny Danon reading the Bible in the United Nations. That's the deed, and reading from Genesis 17, and that the land, God gave the land to Israel. So he holds up the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, in the middle of the UN there, and makes that statement. It's really remarkable. I thought if nothing else, they got a little Bible study at the UN. I'd like to close this short message here this morning by sharing a story about a small group of European believers who have read the Bible, apparently, and now have a love for the people of Israel. And they wanted to find a way to express their love, to show that love, to demonstrate it for Israel. And this is what they decided to do. It's called the Menorah Project. Maybe you heard about it. About a year and a half ago, 11 pro-Israel Germans wanted to express their love and solidarity with Israel. So they decided to make a birthday present for Israel. They chose to build what turned out to be $150,000. They raised the money, all contributions, a replica of the menorah that was stolen from the Second Temple in Jerusalem when the Romans destroyed the temple and the people who were in Jerusalem way back in 70 CE. That menorah, you may remember, was an image of it was pictured in a 3D relief on the wall of what the Arch of Titus, which is in Rome. Let me just show you what that looked like. It's okay. Here you can see. This is what the Arch of Titus looks like today. And if you look on the bottom right-hand corner, the inside of that this section here, I'm going to just expand that image of that section of the Arch of Titus. And this is what it looks like. There's a 3D relief of the Roman soldiers carrying the things out of the temple back in 70. Here's another picture of it. It's a little bit better, easier to see. And you could see the Roman soldiers are carrying on their shoulders this menorah and other items from the temple. And if you look right over here in this outlined area, you see that menorah. A larger image of it is over here. And why I'm focusing on this is because if you look carefully, you can see that, it's been damaged. Look up at the upper left-hand side. You see two of the candelabra extensions here have been broken over the years. I mean, many other parts of the 3D relief, as you look at those, are broken as well. But they decided, these group of Germans decided they wanted to model their menorah after what's on the wall. So here they are making that menorah, and if you look up on that section, they even modeled the broken portions. But they had a reason that they wanted to do it. They didn't want to restore it and make it perfect. Here was their reasoning. They said the reproduction of the menorah is broken, as is the one in the arch. It was broken. They left it that way to represent the broken heart that these builders have for the way the world has mistreated the Jewish people over the last 2,000 years. And specifically, they mentioned the broken theology called replacement theology, where the church has replaced Israel in so many churches. So they made the menorah intentionally that way. I thought that was very touching. Now, here's a picture of the group. All 11 of them there in front who made it. These are the German Christians, 11 of them who traveled by boat from Germany to Rome, which is where they stopped right here. As you can see, the Arch of Titus is right behind them in the distance. They were on their way to Haifa to deliver this menorah, which stood 5 feet high and weighed 265 pounds. Quite a birthday present for Israel. And I applaud them. Today we say, happy birthday, Israel. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that you are a God who keeps his word. The people on earth are just the opposite. But Lord, that's why we look to you. We know we can count on you. Sometimes, Lord, your word seems so distant from us. But time and again, we have so many examples where in your time, you keep that word. Everything that you said you would do, you have done or will do, and we know that, Lord. We've seen it historically, and we know we can trust your word. So, Father, thank you that we can be here today celebrating the rebirth of your nation, 71 years old today. May we, as a group of people who also know how you kept your promise about sending Messiah to give his life for us, the light that you promised in your word to send, not just to the Jews, but to the Gentiles also. And Lord God, you kept that promise as well. And we are a testimony to that. So, Father, may we rejoice today over the confidence that we have that we can continue to place on you, that you will keep your word in everything you said. And Lord, as we celebrate the birth of Israel today, we give you the praise and the glory. In Yeshua's name, amen.